We're joined now by two people who know all about political parties, how they evolve, what the boundaries should be. Michael Steele ran the Republican Party as RNC chair. Howard Dean ran the Democratic Party as DNC chair. And they have many other titles and accolades that I could list. But as we look at the future of both these parties, I begin there. And Michael, your Republican Party has a problem tonight. I guess I'll ask you what you think about what I've now shared with viewers, is that I believe this goes beyond a party or an election or political posturing. There is a concern here about whether both parties will continue to adhere to the results of elections or not in this country.
Yeah, I don't think that's an exaggeration, Ari. I think that's a very finely tuned point based on the evidence and facts that have been presented to us by the party, not just in these moments that occurred today, but going back to probably about a year ago this time, when the president began his narrative to systematically shake down the election of 2020 by, intimating and then outright saying that if he were not the winner, that the election was fraudulent. And so what is disturbing and very problematic for the party is that leaders in this party, took up that mantle, that lie, and began to perpetuate it. And so it wasn't just enough that Trump was saying it. It could have easily been batted down if McConnell or McCarthy or anyone else in leadership stepped into the moment and said, Mr. President, that's not how this works. That's not how our elections are run. The only one to do that was Liz Cheney. And today she paid a price for her honesty and her standing strong on the underlying principles that have not just girded our elections, but that we rely on to keep this country moving forward.
Howard.
I think this is a more serious problem than what's going on in the Republican Party. This is a contest to see if our democracy and our country survives. And most Republicans have chosen their power and chosen not to have a democratic country. The lies that have been told, there were Georgia congressmen out there saying that there was no insurrection and that there's all peaceful and all this stuff. It's not just the lie that Trump won the election. It's the Republican Party has embraced this lie. I think Liz Cheney deserves a lot of credit. And I'm sure there'll be people on my end of the political spectrum that are horrified that I should say that. But what we need is not that we all agree on our vision of America. What we need is honesty and to stand up for core democratic principles. The Republicans have abandoned democratic principles. McCarthy has abandoned them. McConnell has abandoned them. All the backbencher Georgians who are carrying on and people from all over the country. The vast majority do not have a spine. If you could find 6 spines in the Republican Party, I'd say you were exaggerating. We need people to stand up like Liz Cheney did today. And I have every disagreement you can possibly imagine on policy with Liz Cheney. But what we don't agree on is that the loyalty to the country should always trump disagreements on policy. Liz Cheney exhibited that today. She's a true American. And I have to say that most politicians in the Republican Party are no longer Americans because they no longer believe in democracy.
Striking and strong, but it's a day to really take stock. And there have been many discussions over the past 4+ years about how this works and when do people take it seriously. The fact that we are watching this happen in the House Leadership Caucus after January 6th and not before. For anyone who had any doubt or denial about this just being quote unquote words or quote unquote theatrics. It's not theatrics because people died. It's not theatrics because the explicit goal was to prevent the counting of those votes. Had they been at a logistical level, slightly more successful, a few more hours, for example, there might not have been a vote count on that prescribed day. It might have gone to the next day. And then you have people filing the challenges saying, what does that mean? Or it could have been a siege that lasted more days than that. Had it been earlier in the process, had it been November and not January, we also don't know where this would go. So I've said this in my reporting before to viewers, but today is a day that it ratifies and fortifies the problem there. And Cheney talks about the fact that even being silent, which is less than what McCarthy and others are doing, they're doubling down. But even being silent, she says, is unacceptable. Take a look.
Remaining silent and ignoring the lie emboldens the liar. I will not participate in that. I will not sit back and watch in silence while others lead our party down a path that abandons the rule of law and joins the former president's crusade to undermine our democracy.
Michael, I take that to you to another direction, which is what do you think of the silence of the traditional stakeholders of the Republican Party, the so-called adults, the business leaders, the people who have other reasons for working within that party as opposed to, say, the Biden agenda, which in a democracy is their right, and who had really hoped that January 6th and Trump would, quote unquote, go away. It's not going away if it is the litmus test, above all else, including tax cuts, for who runs the party.
No, it's not. And look, any conversation around, policy and Democrats and their socialism and, we are the big tent and, we want these policy agendas to be addressed is all BS. What we've witnessed since really about a year ago this time, and certainly in November and definitely on January 6th, and what we saw play out today on Capitol Hill with members of the Republican Party basically saying, oh, these people who were insurrectionists, no, they were good, loyal citizens. They were no different than people coming to the Capitol for a tour. I mean, you're just damn stupid to say something like that. And you abandon everything this guy over my shoulder stood for, the sacrifice he made to hold this country together. You're now sitting there shredding with stupidity like that. And actions that were taken today by members of my party who abandoned the Lincoln-esque ideal that the Constitution matters and that every element of the Constitution, yes, even though Liz is a member of the Republican Party and yes, she sat in leadership, she did not abandon her constitutional right to speak her mind truthfully and honestly, particularly in the context of her leadership in this party. When the party wanted to go off a cliff, she was the lone voice among a few other lone voices like Mitt Romney and Adam Kinzinger saying, dude, that's a cliff. Don't go there. But they did. So, this now kind of, we're going to now, and this is over, we're going to start governing and we want to engage the Democrats. No, they don't. The grift, the power grab is what this is about. Look at how much money is going to be raised off of what happened today. You've got two Congress people right now traveling the country screaming about, the big lie in Gates and Taylor Greene. They're not serious any longer. So this is where we are.